Why do we have unions? In the early 1700s, the disparity between capital owner's salary and the average worker was getting bigger and bigger. So these average workers working a 12-hour day try to bargain on a local basis, having unions with management for a 10-hour day. Also, they try to bargain with their managers to increase their salaries. Some local unions were successful, others weren't. So, the first National Labor Union was formed. In 1866, this National Labor Union decided to form by taking the local unions and just banding them together into one large national union. What they fought for was an 8-hour workday. And in 1868, they were successful in getting an 8-hour workday for government workers. However, the Haymarket strike, which turned into a riot, damaged this union's reputation. And so, in 1872, this National Labor Union was dissolved. However, at the time, 6 tailors were getting together and they formed the Knights of Labor. This was again a national union, but this national union was different. They worked to end child labor and also for equal pay for everybody. So they're trying to attract women and minorities into union. They also still fought for an 8-hour workday for all workers and benefits, a socialist system. The employer is responsible to maintain the health and safety of their employees. Well, a group of dissident workers didn't agree with what the Knights of Labor were doing. So Samuel Gompers led this group and they formed in 1886 the American Federation of Labor. They wanted more political recognition for unions and union members. They were successful. In fact, they were so successful that their union membership increased, the Knights of Labor membership decreased, and so the Knights of Labor disappears, and the American Federation takes over. In fact, they were very successful because 2 major things happened. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, which killed 150 workers due to unsafe working conditions at that factory, and then the American Federation of Labor was able to get, in 1916, a Child Labor Act passed by Congress. They also had many important strikes that helped their union membership, the most famous being the Pullman strike, happening at the Pullman factory because Mr. Pullman not only provided work for his workers but also housing. The demand for his trains and the train usage had declined, so that he decided to lower worker salary 28% without lowering the rents for where those workers lived. So, on May 11th, 1884, those workers went on strike. Joining those workers around the nation, 125,000 other workers joined them on this strike. The result was the U.S. Army was called in to break the strike, and what happened was 13 workers were killed, 57 were wounded. Other important strikes, one happened in New Jersey when 20,000 women went on strike in clothing factories, fighting against those sweatshops that they had to work in. Another very famous strike was the 1911 Bread and Roses strike, pictured here, because tanks had to deliver the food because these food workers were on strike. Another important strike was the Colorado Miners' strike in 1914, where 13 women and children were killed and also 7 men. The big year was 1919. This is the wave year. That's what it's called. The wave of strikes happens this year. Well, even with all these strikes, the unions still hadn't gotten Congress to see the importance of unions. Not until 1932, the first act by Congress that gave unions some right. First of all, prohibited yellow dog contracts, a contract between an employer and an employee saying the employee could not join a union. Also, the act established that the government could not force strikers back to work by a court injunction. How those strikers were forced back to work is pictured here. These are blackleggers. They're called black laborers because, of course, they wore black pants, and they were used to force strikers back to work. Well, Roosevelt, because of the Depression, realized that things had to be done and jobs had to be found. So in 1933, he passed the National Industrial Recovery Act, which established the NRA, which set minimum wage and maximum hours for workers. If you were an NRA employer, you got to post this poster on your window telling people who shopped with you you're a member of the NRA and hired union workers. This act gave unions the privilege to collect a bargain, but Supreme Court didn't support it and overturned it in 1935. So that in 1935, with the help of the then Secretary of Labor, Frances Perkin, the first woman cabinet member, she got Franklin Delano Roosevelt to sign the Wagner Act, sponsored by Robert Wagner, which allowed workers to unionize and allowed unions to collect a bargain. With this passage of the act, union membership starts to escalate, so much so that industrial organizations decide to band together and establish, first of all, the Committee of Industrial Organization, then the Congress of Industrial Organization under the leadership of John Lewis, pictured here. What they fought for was a little different than the AFL because they were much more militant than the AFL. However, due to some other things that happened with unions, their membership started to decline also. And so, in 1955, they merged with the AFL. And this was hard for them because the CIO really pushed to work for safe working conditions.